I trusted them. I trusted the company, the HR, and the rules they promised would keep me safe. I never thought they could turn against me until the day I realized I was completely alone. My name is Naomi Thompson, and I had spent the last 4 years building my career in downtown Chicago. I was a senior operations analyst at Riverside Consulting, a company known for being professional, fair, and supposedly safe for women in the workplace. I love my job. I love the people I thought I could trust. When I first started, I was full of hope. I came in early every day, stayed late if I needed to, and did my work better than anyone expected. I didn't cause problems. I didn't play office politics. I kept my head down and my heart open. I believed that if you worked hard, the company would notice and reward you. But that belief, it was about to betray me. It started with small things. My manager, Bradley Miller, had transferred from another office, and suddenly I was spending more one-on-one time with him than anyone else in my department. At first, it felt normal. He was my boss after all. But then came the long meetings that seemed unnecessary, the comments about my dedication that made me uncomfortable, and the way he lingered just a little too long when we were alone in the conference room. I told myself I was imagining things. I didn't want to believe that someone I respected could be crossing a line. I needed this job. I had worked too hard to risk losing it over my imagination. The first warning sign came during a project deadline. Bradley had given me an impossible timeline, knowing I couldn't meet it alone. When I worked late to finish it, he praised my dedication in a way that made the room feel smaller. My coworkers stared, uncomfortable, but said nothing. I shrugged it off. Then the whispers started. Small things, emails not answered, tasks reassigned without explanation, colleagues avoiding eye contact in meetings. It was subtle, but it was there. I tried to tell myself it wasn't personal. Maybe it was just a busy week. Maybe I was overthinking it. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Then it happened. The day that changed everything. I was asked to meet Bradley in his office after hours. At first, I thought it was about a promotion. I had been working tirelessly, and I had earned recognition. But as soon as I stepped inside, the air felt heavier. He smiled, that same polite smile he had always worn, but there was something different in his eyes. He praised my work, yes, but the words felt like a trap. He asked questions I didn't expect, leaned in closer than I was comfortable with, and mentioned things only someone who knew too much about me could know. That's when I said the word I thought would protect me. No. I said it clearly. I said it firmly. And everything changed. The next morning, the project I had been working on was reassigned to another employee. Emails I sent were ignored. My performance reviews suddenly became critical, with mistakes I had never made highlighted in front of others. I was being punished, but I didn't know why. I remember the stories I had been told about HR. How they were there to protect employees, how they would listen to concerns and handle problems fairly. So I went to HR. I walked into the office of Linda Collins, the HR manager, and explained everything. The meetings, the inappropriate comments, the discomfort, the impossible deadlines. I told her I was scared and I needed protection. She nodded. She smiled. She thanked me for being brave enough to come forward. She took notes. She promised confidentiality. I left the office feeling a lightness I hadn't felt in weeks. Finally, someone was on my side. Finally, I thought I was safe. I was wrong. That evening, I started noticing changes almost immediately. Bradley knew things he shouldn't have. My coworkers whispered when I passed by. Emails I had sent to HR went unanswered or vaguely brushed aside. And then came the first meeting that made it clear. HR wasn't there to protect me. They were there to protect the company. And in doing so, I was left to face the consequences of speaking the truth alone. The next morning, I arrived at Riverside Consulting earlier than usual, hoping that today would feel normal again. Maybe HR had handled everything. Maybe Bradley would behave professionally. Maybe the whispers and stares would stop. I was wrong. From the moment I stepped into the office, something felt off. My cubicle neighbor barely looked at me. Emails I had sent the night before about project updates went unanswered. Even Lucas, my closest friend at work, seemed tense, his usual smile replaced by a polite, distant nod. I walked toward the conference room for my morning team meeting and overheard murmurs behind the closed door. Did you see Naomi's complaint? Someone whispered. HR actually sided with her boss. My stomach dropped. Sided with him? In the meeting, Bradley was charming as ever. The same confident smile, the same polite tone. But I noticed something different. His eyes darted toward HR representatives seated at the table, glancing at their notes like they were plotting together. I tried to speak up during the meeting, offering an idea about improving workflow, but my suggestion was dismissed. Not politely, not constructively, just brushed aside as if I didn't exist. My manager, who had once praised my insights, nodded at someone else's comment and said, "That's a better approach." The humiliation was quiet, but it cut deeper than any argument ever could. After the meeting, I went straight to HR again. "Linda," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "what's happening? I thought I came to you for protection. Now it feels worse than before." She smiled, calm and professional, and said, "Naomi, the company has to consider all sides. We're just making sure everyone is heard." I blinked, trying to understand. You mean my side doesn't matter?" Her expression didn't change. "We're neutral. It's not personal. Neutral, right?" That's what they all said when the betrayal was already decided. That afternoon, I found out the first tangible consequence of speaking up. My name had been removed from an important client presentation. A project I had spent weeks preparing was now assigned to someone else. No explanation, no apology, just erased. I stared at the email, my fingers frozen on the keyboard. My stomach churned. The betrayal wasn't subtle anymore. It was blatant. It wasn't just Bradley. It wasn't just HR. The whole office had shifted. It was me versus everyone else. At home that night, I sat on my small apartment balcony overlooking Lake Michigan, trying to make sense of it. My phone buzzed. An email from HR. "Naomi, please schedule a follow-up meeting. We want to review your concerns further." I read it 3 times. The wording was polite, neutral, safe, but I knew better. Review your concerns meant they were planning how to undermine me, not protect me. I felt a mix of anger and fear. Anger that I had trusted them. Fear that this was only the beginning. The following week brought more subtle punishments. Tasks being reassigned without explanation. Emails ignored or delayed. Colleagues avoiding collaboration. Bradley smiling politely while undermining me in meetings. Every day felt heavier than the last. I tried to document everything. Screenshots, emails, notes, anything that could protect me if I needed it. But I knew that documentation alone wouldn't save me. Then came the first real shock. I overheard HR and Bradley discussing me in a private office. I wasn't eavesdropping. My desk was near the conference room. Words like problem, risk, and reputation floated to me. My heart sank. They weren't talking about fixing the problem. They were talking about controlling the narrative, and I was the problem in their story. It hit me hard. They had never been on my side. I realized then that my trust in HR had been my first mistake. The system that promised protection was designed to protect them, not me. And from that moment, I knew I had to fight carefully, quietly, and strategically. The office had become a battlefield, and I was the only soldier without allies. Even Lucas, my once trusted coworker, seemed hesitant to speak to me. I caught his eyes in the break room one day, but he quickly looked away, muttering something about a meeting. It wasn't fear of me. It was fear for himself. That made the loneliness heavier. I started to notice the small ways my life at Riverside Consulting was being quietly dismantled. My emails were being monitored and responses delayed until I looked incompetent. Projects I had nurtured for months were handed over to colleagues who had no idea what they were doing. Meetings that once acknowledged my ideas now completely ignored me. Every day, I felt small or diminished. I tried to maintain my professionalism, my usual composure, but inside, I was burning with frustration and fear. One afternoon, I received a request from HR to meet again. My stomach tightened as I stepped into Linda Collins' office. "Naomi," she began, smiling that same calm, polished smile, "we just want to make sure everything is clear regarding your recent concerns." I leaned forward, voice tight. "You mean, you want to see how you can make me look like the problem?" She blinked, as if surprised by my tone. "We're just documenting everything. Neutrality is our priority." I swallowed my anger. Neutrality, right? That word had been repeated so many times, but now I understood it for what it really was, a shield for the company and my harasser, not protection for me. Back at my desk, I tried to focus on work, but whispers followed me wherever I went. Colleagues avoided eye contact. I overheard someone say, "She's probably exaggerating everything." Another voice murmured, "HR is just covering their own backs." Every corner of the office felt like a trap. Every smile felt fake. Then came the first truly personal attack. A memo from HR appeared in my inbox. A performance review highlighting supposed issues in my communication and attitude. I read it in disbelief. Every criticism was exaggerated. Every neutral action twisted to make me look unprofessional. It wasn't about work anymore. It was character assassination. I realized that Bradley had aligned himself with HR long before I had ever voiced my concerns. He had manipulated the system to ensure that any complaint I made would backfire. I felt a cold weight settle over my chest. For the first time, I understood the depth of the betrayal. HR had never intended to protect me. They had set me up. That night, I sat alone in my small apartment, staring at the city lights of Chicago. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. "Naomi, you don't know who's really behind this." My heart raced. Who could it be? Another coworker? Someone higher up? Or someone who knew Bradley's secrets? Fear mixed with curiosity. Whoever was clearly knew more than I did. And somehow, this situation was bigger than I imagined. Over the next week, the subtle attacks became more strategic. My schedule was being manipulated, so I couldn't meet with clients. My work files were misplaced or reassigned. Bradley continued to smile in meetings while undermining me in private emails. Every move I made seemed anticipated. Every attempt to prove my competence was blocked. I realized then, this wasn't just about Bradley or HR. It was about control. They wanted to destroy me professionally without anyone outside the office noticing. That realization hardened me. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't beg. I couldn't trust anyone. But I could watch. I could wait. I could collect the pieces I needed. The office had turned into a trap, but I wasn't broken yet. By the following Monday, Riverside Consulting no longer felt like a workplace I belonged to. The office had always been professional, but now it carried an edge I couldn't ignore. Smiles were slower. Conversations paused when I walked by. Colleagues who once greeted me warmly now avoided eye contact. Fear had a sound, and I was hearing it everywhere. I sat in my cubicle, staring at my computer screen, trying to focus, but my mind was elsewhere. Emails went unanswered. Projects I had built from scratch were reassigned. Every step I took felt like walking on thin ice. Then Lucas stopped by my desk. He looked tense, glancing around before leaning in. "Naomi, be careful," he whispered. "I've seen how HR is handling this. It's not just Bradley anymore. People upstairs are involved." I nodded, but my stomach churned. Upstairs? Who else is part of this? Later that day, I noticed something unusual. One of Bradley's assistants, someone I had barely spoken to, left a folder on my desk with no note. Curiosity mixed with caution as I opened it. Inside were internal emails, memos, and notes, evidence that Bradley had been manipulating HR for months. They knew about complaints before they were even filed. They planned to make anyone who questioned him look incompetent. They were watching every move I made. My hands shook as I realized the depth of the betrayal. That evening, I sat in my car outside the office, phone in hand. I typed a message to an old friend who had worked at Riverside Consulting before me, someone I trusted. "You won't believe what's happening here. I think HR is protecting my boss over me." A few minutes later, a reply came. "Naomi, be careful. It's worse than you think. Don't trust anyone, not even the emails you're reading." My heart pounded. Someone outside the office knew more than I did. Someone was watching too. But were they trying to help me or warn me to back off? The next day, things escalated further. Bradley called me into his office under the guise of discussing a client report. The moment I stepped inside, I knew it wasn't about work. His tone was friendly, almost casual, but there was a sharpness underneath. "I hear you've been complaining," he said. "I hope we can resolve this." I kept my voice steady. "I've only been doing my job, Bradley. Nothing more, nothing less." He smirked. "We'll see." By midweek, the first real sign of an ally appeared. During a late-night project review, I noticed a folder on my desk labeled Naomi Confidential. Inside were emails, internal notes, and project data that had been quietly preserved, things HR and Bradley couldn't twist against me. It wasn't much, but was enough to prove I wasn't completely alone. Someone had been watching quietly, collecting evidence, waiting for the right moment. That night, I returned to my apartment, heart racing, mind buzzing. I realized something important. I couldn't fight HR and Bradley head on, but I could watch, record, and plan. The betrayal had been deep, but now, armed with small pieces of truth and a hidden ally, I had a chance. The office wasn't just a battlefield. It was a chessboard, and I was learning how to play. I had learned one painful truth. At Riverside Consulting, trust could get you destroyed. But I also discovered a glimmer of hope, a hidden folder with evidence that someone, somewhere, was quietly observing what HR and Bradley were doing. I clutched the folder on my way to the office, my pulse racing. Today would be different. I wasn't naive anymore. The morning started like any other, but the tension was thicker. Bradley was in a meeting, his confident smile hiding something. HR seemed unusually quiet. I felt eyes on me from every corner. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Check your desk. Now, heart pounding, I slid my badge through the turnstile and made a beeline to my cubicle. On my chair was a folder labeled Evidence. Do not open here. Inside were emails, HR memos, and internal reports, the very proof I needed. But the kicker was a note at the top. Bradley is not alone. HR is fully aware. But one person here is willing to help you. Watch for the next move. My stomach turned. I wasn't just up against Bradley anymore. I was up against the entire system. Later that day, the twist came. I had been scheduled for a one-on-one with Bradley in the main conference room. I tried to refuse, but HR insisted it was mandatory. As soon as I stepped in, I realized something was off. Bradley wasn't alone. Sitting across the table was Samantha Green, the senior HR manager, the one I thought I could trust. Samantha's expression was unreadable. Naomi, Bradley began, we need to talk about your behavior lately. There have been complaints. I froze. Complaints? I had been the one coming forward. Then Samantha spoke. Naomi, you need to understand, we have to protect the company's reputation. Your reports, your emails, they've created a problem for us. My pulse spiked. You mean you're siding with him? After everything. Samantha's voice was calm, almost cold. We're doing what's best for the company. You were warned. But there's a way forward if you cooperate. Cooperate. The word rang in my ears like a trap. As I left the room, shaking, I realized the truth. The betrayal wasn't just Bradley or HR. The system itself had turned against me. But I also realized something else. Someone had left that evidence on her desk for a reason. Someone wanted me to see the truth and act carefully. My mind raced. Who could it be? Was it Lucas? Another colleague? Someone higher up in the company? My strategy began to form. Play carefully, document everything, and wait for the right moment to strike. By the end of the week, I had learned to navigate the office like a chessboard. Small moves, small victories. Collect evidence quietly. Avoid traps. Test allies carefully. The first plot twist had revealed the depth of HR's betrayal, and I knew the battle had only just begun. And I also knew one terrifying truth. The divorce from trust wasn't just personal. It was professional, emotional, and ruthless. After the meeting with Bradley and Samantha, I realized one truth. I couldn't rely on anyone officially at Riverside Consulting. HR wasn't neutral. Management wasn't fair, and Bradley had support at every level. But I wasn't powerless. I had the folder, the hidden evidence, and my own determination. I spent the weekend in my small Chicago apartment, poring over every email, memo, and note in that folder. Each page told a story. Bradley had been manipulating workloads for months. HR had been documenting everything against me, not for my protection. Complaints from other employees had been twisted to frame me as difficult. My hands shook as I realized how deep the betrayal went. But the more I read, the clearer a plan began to form. Monday arrived, and I entered the office with a calmness she hadn't felt in weeks. Inside, everything looked normal, but appearances could be deceiving. I started small, reorganized my emails and documents to protect myself, took screenshots of every interaction that could later prove misconduct, noted inconsistencies in Bradley's reports and HR's memos. It was methodical, quiet, and invisible to everyone else. Then came the first sign that my secret ally was real. A sticky note appeared on my desk that morning. Bradley trusts the wrong people. HR's notes are inaccurate. Keep collecting. I'll contact you soon. No name. No signature. My pulse raced. Someone inside, someone who had access to information and was willing to help, was watching my back. It was the lifeline I hadn't realized I needed. Over the next week, I began testing the waters. I subtly asked Lucas about odd discrepancies in HR memos. I monitored Bradley's meetings from a distance, noting when he contradicted his own statements. I started keeping a private journal of events, dates, times, conversations. Every small move was a piece of a larger plan. Every observation added to my growing arsenal. The real breakthrough came during a late afternoon meeting. Bradley left the conference room, leaving Samantha behind. I seized the opportunity. "Ms. Green," I said carefully, "I need to understand something. Are you documenting my performance or protecting him?" Samantha's eyes narrowed, but she didn't answer. Instead, she glanced at the folder I had left on the table earlier. I realized the evidence I had been quietly compiling was forcing them to notice my power. Even in silence, I had won a small battle. By the end of the week, my confidence had grown. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing to strike back strategically. But with my growing awareness came a chilling realization. The system would never forgive me for seeing the truth. Bradley would escalate. HR would escalate. The company had too much at stake to let one employee expose the cracks. And I knew one thing for certain. The next move would change everything. I had been careful for weeks, watching, documenting, and collecting proof of HR and Bradley's manipulation. The office felt like a chessboard, and I was learning to anticipate every move. But I wasn't prepared for what happened that Thursday morning. When I arrived, a small envelope had been slipped under my office door. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Meet me in the parking garage at 6:30 p.m. Alone. Trust me." No name. No explanation. My pulse raced. My mind spun through possibilities. Was it Lucas? Someone in HR? Or someone higher up who had been silently observing me? I spent the day pretending nothing was happening, answering emails, and keeping my composure. But every hour felt heavier than the last. At 6:30 p.m., I parked my car in the nearly empty garage. Shadows stretched across the concrete floor, and the distant hum of traffic echoed through the space. A figure stepped out from behind a pillar. It was Lucas. My first instinct was relief, but quickly I felt tension tighten my chest. "Lucas," I whispered. "You sent the note?" He nodded. "I had to. I've seen what's been happening to you, Naomi. Bradley and HR have been manipulating the system for months. You think you're alone, but you're not. I've been keeping track too." He handed me a flash drive. Everything you've been looking for, and more. Emails, memos, internal messages, proof that Bradley has been lying, HR has been covering for him, and the company has known for months. My hand shook as I took it. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. "You can expose them," Lucas continued. "But you have to be careful. One wrong move, and they'll destroy you completely." I nodded. I had learned caution the hard way. The first major plot twist had been HR siding with Bradley. This was the second twist. The ally I didn't realize I had been watching all along. Someone inside the office wanted justice as much as I did. With Lucas' help, I began planning my counterattack. But it wouldn't be simple. The betrayal ran deep. I had to play every move perfectly or risk losing everything I'd fought for. The next day, I started small. I reorganized my documentation, making it impossible for HR or Bradley to claim I was lying. I monitored conversations, quietly confirming who was on Bradley's side and who could be swayed. I identified weaknesses in the HR chain, those who were loyal to the company but not to Bradley personally. Every step was calculated every move deliberate. By Friday, I was ready to test the waters. She requested a private meeting with Samantha Green, senior HR. "I want to be clear," I said, calm but firm. "I've collected evidence. Emails, memos, documents. Everything that's been happening to me. I'm not bluffing." Samantha's eyes flicked to the flash drive Lucas had helped me secure. My calm demeanor wavered slightly. "You don't understand the consequences," Samantha said. "I do," I replied. "But I also know the truth, and I'm ready to fight for it." For the first time, I felt a sense of power. The fear and isolation that had dominated my life for weeks was beginning to shift. That evening, Naomi and Lucas sat in my apartment, reviewing every piece of evidence. "We have enough," Lucas said. "Enough to show HR and the higher-ups exactly what Bradley has been doing. And if we time it right, it'll protect you from retaliation." I nodded. My heart pounded. The road ahead was dangerous, but now I had the tools and the ally to face it head-on. The day had come. I had collected months of evidence, emails, memos, and internal HR communications proving Bradley's manipulation and HR's complicity. Lucas had been invaluable, quietly confirming details, securing proof, and guiding me through every move. I arrived at Riverside Consulting early, heart racing, but mind clear. Today, everything would change. I requested a meeting with the CEO and senior HR executives. I walked into the boardroom, carrying the flash drive and a printed dossier of everything I had documented. Bradley was there, smiling confidently, unaware that the tide was about to turn. Samantha Green sat nearby, eyes carefully neutral. I began, calm but firm. "I'm here to present the facts. Bradley has misrepresented, manipulated workloads, and created a hostile work environment. HR has documented complaints against me to protect him, not to protect the company or its employees." I slid the dossier and flash drive across the table. Every email, memo, and screenshot was laid bare. Bradley's confident smile faltered. Samantha's neutral expression cracked. Whispers spread across the room. Executives scrolled through the emails, murmuring as the evidence became undeniable. For the first time, I felt power in my own truth. The months of fear, isolation, and betrayal were finally shifting in my favor. The CEO leaned back, exhaling slowly. "This is serious. You've documented this thoroughly. We will investigate and take action immediately." Bradley opened his mouth, but no words came. The weight of his manipulation had been exposed. Samantha tried to interject, but the CEO cut her off. "This ends now. HR's role is to protect employees, not manipulate them. That is clear." I left the boardroom later that afternoon with a sense of relief I hadn't felt in months. The office wasn't perfect. Bradley would still have allies, and HR would still try to cover themselves. But for the first time, I had the truth on my side. Lucas met me outside. "You did it," he said quietly. I smiled, mixing with exhaustion and relief. We did it. But more importantly, I survived. In the following weeks, Bradley was reassigned and placed under investigation. Samantha Green and other HR staff underwent disciplinary review. I received formal recognition for my professionalism and courage. I finally realized the most important lesson. Trust yourself, document everything, and don't let betrayal define you. As I walked out of Riverside Consulting for the last time that month, I looked at the city skyline, lights twinkling across Chicago. I had endured deception, manipulation, and isolation, but I had emerged stronger, smarter, and unbroken. I thought HR would protect me. I was wrong, but I trusted myself, and that was enough. Have you ever trusted someone, only to realize the people who promised to protect you were the ones working against you? I survived, but what would you do if you were in my shoes? Comment below. I want to hear your story, because sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight in silence.